Welcome to Nightmare Coming, where folklore bleeds into reality. Every story you thought was just a tale has a truth waiting in the dark. One nightmare at a time, we dig deeper into what was left unexplained. If you dare to question what's real like, subscribe and share the story that still haunts you. Then, let's step into tonight's nightmare. Story 1. The House with the Green Light. When I was 9, Halloween was everything. The air would change cooler, sharper, and the whole neighborhood felt alive in a way it didn't the rest of the year. The sound of leaves under sneakers, the smell of pumpkin guts from every porch, the faint plastic rustle of candy bags, it all meant freedom, even if just for a night. But there was one rule every kid on our street knew. Don't go near the house with the green porch light. It sat at the very end of the cul-de-sac, partly hidden behind a line of oak trees, and it never looked right. The yard was too still, the windows always dark. No pumpkins, no decorations, no movement except for that light. Pale green, like something glowing underwater. I used to think it was just some grumpy old man who didn't want to join in. But every year, someone new would whisper about a kid who went up there anyway and came back different. Not hurt, not missing, just quieter. A little wrong around the eyes. My best friend Jason didn't believe it, of course. He was the type to poke the things everyone else avoided. So that Halloween, when he dared me to go knock, I said yes. It felt brave at the time. Now, I think it was just stupid. We waited until the end of the night, when most of the other kids were heading home. The streetlights buzzed faintly, and the sky was that kind of grayish purple, where you can't tell if it's still night or already morning. The green light glowed steady at the end of the block. We walked toward it, the sound of our footsteps on the cracked pavement sounding too loud. The closer we got, the colder it felt, not the wind kind of cold, but that inside your skin kind that makes you want to turn around. Jason went first, bounding up the steps like he owned the place. I followed, holding my plastic pumpkin tighter than I meant to. Up close, the light looked strange, almost alive. It didn't flicker, just pulsed faintly, like it was breathing. Jason knocked 3 times, grinning back at me like this was just another dare. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the door opened slowly, like someone was pulling it from very far away. The person standing there wasn't what I expected. She looked normal at first, just an old woman, thin, wearing a housecoat. But her eyes caught the green light in a way that made them look glassy, like marble. She smiled, and her teeth looked too many. "Trick or treat," Jason said, his voice shaky but proud. The woman tilted her head, like she was trying to remember what those words meant. Then she held out her hand and dropped something into his bag. I don't know why, but I looked down at her wrist, and that's when I saw at her veins, glowing faintly green under her skin. Jason didn't see it. He was too busy laughing, turning to run back down the steps. I was frozen. The woman leaned closer to me and whispered, "You shouldn't have come?" Her breath was cold, and it smelled like rain on metal. I ran then, fast as I could, not even looking back to see if Jason followed. When I finally stopped, halfway down the block, he caught up to me, laughing. He said I should have seen my face. But when I looked in his bag, I saw what she'd given him. It wasn't candy. It looked like a marble, cloudy green, pulsing faintly with light. He tossed it away, but by the time we got home, it was back in his bag. He swore he didn't put it there. The next morning, his mom called mine. Jason hadn't woken up yet. They said he was breathing, but barely. When I saw him a few days later, he looked fine except for one thing. His eyes, once brown, were green, the same pale, steady green as that porch light. After that, the house went dark for good. No light, no sign anyone ever lived there. But every year on Halloween, if you walked to the end of the street, You can still see it glow faintly through the trees, like it's waiting for the next kid brave enough to knock. And sometimes, when I look in the mirror under the wrong kind of light, I swear my eyes look greener than they used to. Story 2. The Candy That Wasn't Candy. A few years after that Halloween with the green light, I stopped going door to door. I told myself I was too old for it, but the truth was, I just didn't want to see that glow again. Still, my little cousin Emma begged me to take her one year. She was 7, wearing this floppy pumpkin costume that made her look more round than tall. I figured, what harm could there be? It was just candy, right? We stuck to the same few blocks, the kind where parents stood at the end of driveways and everyone's porch lights looked warm and orange. I remember thinking how normal it all felt, how good it was to just watch her laugh again, holding out her bag and saying trick or treat, like it was some kind of sacred spell. But then, around the 5th or 6th house, I noticed something odd. In her bag, among all the bright wrappers and lollipops, there was one piece I didn't recognize wrapped in matte black paper, tied off with what looked like silver thread. No label, no brand, no shine. It looked older somehow, like something you'd find in a jar in a dusty general store. I asked her where she got it, but she didn't know. Said she thought one of the houses gave it to her. I told her to throw it away, and she did, dropped it right into a trash can by the curb. But 20 minutes later, when we checked her bag again, it was there. Same black wrapping, same silver thread. I tried to play it off as a mix-up. Maybe another house gave her one just like it. But something about that didn't sit right. We decided to head home early. On the way back, she kept saying she could hear someone walking behind us. I looked every few seconds, but the street was empty. When we got home, I dumped out her candy on the table, sorting through everything like I used to when I was a kid. But that piece, the black one, wasn't there. I figured it was gone, and I told her to wash up and get ready for bed. Later that night, when I went to throw away the candy wrappers, I saw it again, sitting neatly in the middle of the kitchen counter, like someone had placed it there on purpose. The paper was cold when I touched it, like it had been sitting outside all night. I thought about throwing it away again, but for some reason I couldn't. I just stared at it, waiting for something to happen. When I finally unwrapped it, there wasn't chocolate inside. There was a tiny folded slip of paper yellowed, torn on one edge, with 2 words written in neat handwriting. Don't eat them. The lights flickered. I dropped it and backed away, calling for my aunt. She came downstairs groggy and annoyed, asking what I was yelling about. When I pointed at the counter, it was gone. The next morning, Emma woke up complaining that her stomach hurt. Not the usual kind of stomach ache either. She said it felt like something was moving. My aunt thought it was candy, too much sugar. But that night, I found another one of those black-wrapped candies sitting on Emma's windowsill. I don't remember putting it there, and I don't think anyone else could have. I threw it out the window and locked it, but the next morning it was back on her nightstand, unwrapped this time. Inside was another note, smaller than before. It said, "You already did." That was the night we took her to the hospital. The doctor said it was food poisoning, maybe bad sweets, but I never told them what I'd seen. Amma got better, mostly. She doesn't like Halloween now, won't even eat candy. And sometimes when I visit, I catch her staring at her bedroom window late at night, like she's waiting for something to come back. I still find those black candies, sometimes one in my mailbox, one under the seat of my car, once even in my pocket. I've never unwrapped another one, but sometimes I wonder what would happen if I did. Would it finally stop? Or would it finally start? Story 3. The mask that wouldn't come off. When I was 11, there was this kid named Tyler who lived 3 houses down. Quiet kid. Always wore the same gray hoodie, kept to himself. But that Halloween, he showed up at school wearing a mask. Not the store-bought kind, but something he'd clearly made himself. It looked like a burlap sack, stitched together with dark thread, the eye holes cut uneven. It was supposed to be a scarecrow, I think. At first, everyone thought it was cool in that weird, creepy way. The teachers let him keep it on because it was part of his costume. And he never talked much anyway. But after a few days, people started noticing something off. He kept wearing it even after Halloween was over, like days after, then weeks. When our teacher finally told him to take it off, he said, "I can't." Everyone laughed, thinking it was a joke. But he just sat there, breathing through that rough fabric, the edges of it brushing against his shoulders. His voice sounded different, like it was echoing from somewhere deeper. One of the braver kids, Jason, tried to pull it off at recess. He grabbed the edge and yanked, and I swear to God, Tyler screamed. Not a normal scream either. It was this raw animal sound that made everyone freeze. When Jason let go, his hands were bleeding. Tiny cuts, like from glass. Tyler ran home, still screaming through the mask. After that, he stopped coming to school. His house stayed dark, except for his bedroom window. You could see the flicker of a candle some nights, just barely through the curtains. The adults said his mom took him to stay with relatives. But a week later, I saw him. It was late, close to midnight, and I was walking back from my friend's house after sneaking out to play video games. I passed by the empty lot behind our street, and there he was. Tyler, standing in the middle of the lot, still wearing that mask. His hoodie was gone, replaced by a long, ragged coat. His head tilted to one side, like the mask was too heavy. I called out his name, but he didn't move. Just that slow tilt, side to side. Then I realized his feet weren't quite touching the ground. His shoes were just barely brushing the dirt, swaying like he was hanging from something I couldn't see. When I blinked, he was gone. The next morning, the lot was empty, but there were footprints all over. Small ones, like a kid's, pressed deep into the mud. They led to my house. That night, I found something waiting on my porch. A burlap mask, neatly folded, with a note pinned to it in crooked handwriting. Try it on. It fits better the longer you wear it. I burned it, or at least I thought I did. But a few weeks ago, almost 15 years later, I was cleaning out my garage, and there it was again, resting on a shelf. The same rough fabric, the same smell of smoke and dirt. I swear I didn't touch it, but when I turned the lights off that night, I could hear something breathing behind me, slow, muffled, like someone wearing burlap. Story 4. The house that gave out teeth. There was always that one house every kid avoided during trick-or-treat. The dark one at the end of Maple Street, with the leaning fence and the overgrown yard. Old Mrs. Carver lived there, or at least that's what people said. Nobody had actually seen her in years. But on Halloween, her porch light would come on, just once a year, the faint yellow glow flickering like a dying candle. And when it did, every kid in town felt the same strange pull curiosity mixed with dread. I was 13 the year I finally went up to her door. My friends dared me, of course. "Just knock," they said. "You don't even have to go inside." The light was already on when we got there, and something about the way it glowed through the dirty windows made me feel like it was waiting. The others hung back on the sidewalk, whispering. I climbed the 3 creaking steps and noticed a bowl by the door, not full of candy, but of small, pale shapes. At first, I thought they were those chalky white mints, the kind that melt on your tongue. But when I looked closer, I realized they weren't mints. They were teeth. Real ones, human teeth. Before I could even step back, the door opened just a crack. I didn't see her face, only a single gray eye staring through the gap. "You've come back," she whispered. I remember that her voice was papery, like the sound of leaves scraping against a window. I told her I didn't know what she meant. but she just slid one bony hand through the door, holding out a small paper bag. I didn't want to take it, but my body did it anyway, like my hand wasn't mine. Then the door shut without another sound. Inside the bag were more teeth, at least a dozen, but one stood out. It was bigger, yellowed, with a silver filling that caught the porch light. It looked familiar in a way I couldn't place. I dropped the bag and ran. My friends laughed when I told them, said I was making it up. But the next morning, the bag was sitting on my front step again, neatly tied shut. A few days later, my mom called me into the kitchen. She was pale, holding her jaw. "Do you know where my tooth went?" she asked. One of her molars, the one with the silver filling, had fallen out overnight. But when she showed me the gap in her smile, I knew it wasn't loose. It had been taken. That night, I heard something moving through the house, soft, shuffling steps. I thought it was Mom, until I realized they were coming from under the floor, scraping sounds like fingernails dragging against wood. Then a whisper, "You've come back." When the noise stopped, I ran to my room and shut the door. But the next morning, I noticed something strange. A tooth sitting on my pillow, small and white. A child's tooth. My tooth. The one I'd lost when I was 7. I could still see the faint crack from when I'd fallen off my bike. That night, I tried to throw it away. I tossed it into the creek behind our house, watched it sink under the water. But it didn't stay gone. Every Halloween since, I find another one. Sometimes in my shoes, sometimes in the mailbox, once even in my mouth when I woke up. Last year, I didn't go out at all. I kept the lights off, stayed quiet, didn't open the door. But just after midnight, I heard the creak of my porch steps, slow, steady. And when I looked through the peephole, I saw that same paper bag waiting by the door. I didn't open it. I won't, but I can hear what's inside. Faint clicking, like something small trying to chatter through the paper. And sometimes I wonder, if teeth remember where they came from, how long before they try to find their way home? Story 5. The Kid Who Knocked Twice. When I was about 14, I started helping out at my uncle's gas station. It sat right off Highway 9, far enough from town that after dark, the place felt swallowed by the woods. Halloween night was slow that year, just a few cars passing through. A handful of families heading home from trick-or-treating. Around 10, the road went quiet. My uncle had already gone home, so I was alone behind the counter, half watching a tiny TV, playing old horror movies when I heard 2 knocks at the glass door. Not loud, just 2 short, deliberate taps. There was a boy standing outside, maybe 8 or 9, wearing a little skeleton costume. His mask was off, dangling from his wrist. He had this blank look on his face, like he wasn't really seeing me. I unlocked the door, stupid, I know, and asked if he was lost. He didn't answer, just held out a pillowcase, the kind kids use for candy, and whispered, "Trick or treat." His voice was flat, too quiet. I glanced outside, no car, no parents, no flashlight, nothing. Just fog rolling off the woods. I told him I didn't have candy, but he could call someone if he needed. He looked down at the counter, then at me again, and said, "You did last year?" The thing is, I didn't work there last year. My uncle did. I started to tell him that when he knocked again, twice, on the counter this time. Tap, tap. It made my skin crawl, like a signal I didn't understand. He turned and walked out before I could say anything else. I watched him cross the parking lot, heading straight toward the tree line. I yelled for him to stop, but he didn't turn around. When I stepped outside, the fog was so thick I could barely see my own breath. I called my uncle, told him what happened, and he said something I'll never forget. Lock the door. If he knocks twice again, don't open it. The power flickered not long after. The lights dimmed, and for a second everything went dead silent. No crickets, no wind, just the hum of the cooler fading out. Then tap tap. 2 knocks. This time from the side window, near the snack aisle. I froze. The window was fogged from inside, but I could see the shape of a small hand pressed against it. When I finally forced myself to move, I grabbed the flashlight and walked toward the glass. The beam caught the boy's face, only it wasn't right. His eyes were open too wide, his skin grayish, like he'd been standing in the cold too long. I shouted that I was calling the cops, and he smiled a slow, strange smile that didn't reach his eyes, and said, "You'll have candy next year." Then he turned and disappeared into the fog again. The police came, searched the woods, but they didn't find anyone. No footprints, no signs of a kid at all. One of the officers said the same story comes up every few years. Someone sees a little boy trick-or-treating long after the streets are empty, always knocking twice. Some people say he died on that stretch of road decades ago, hit by a car while trying to cross in the fog. A few months later, I found something stuck in the crack of the gas station door. A small plastic skeleton hand, the kind you'd find in a kid's costume set. It was broken off at the wrist. I threw it away. But every Halloween since, around 10 o'clock, I still hear it. 2 soft knocks. Sometimes on the window, sometimes on my front door at home. I never open it. But I keep candy ready anyway, just in case. Sometimes I think about how all these nights bleed together. The masks, the voices, the knocks. Every story I've told, they all come back to the same thing. Halloween isn't about monsters or ghosts. It's about what happens when you open your door to the wrong thing. When you mistake what's outside for something harmless, something human. I tell myself I don't believe in any of it. I live in a well-lit neighborhood now, far from the woods, far from those empty houses. But every year, when October rolls around, the air changes. The shadows stretch longer. Kids start rehearsing their laughter, and somewhere in the distance, I always hear footsteps on wet leaves. I keep my porch light off now. I don't hand out candy, don't even look out the window when the doorbell rings. But it doesn't matter. The knocks still come, always twice. Always soft, polite, like a reminder. Sometimes I wonder if Halloween ever really ends, or if it just waits. Maybe that's why the stories never stop. Maybe we all take a piece of it with us, the mask, the tooth, the candlelight. Maybe it follows us home. So if you hear those 2 knocks this year, don't open the door. Not unless you're ready to see you still trick-or-treating out there. Because some of them never stopped. Some of them never went home.